Sylvia, it's great to have you here. So talk to me about Botanica and your journey with Botanica and how you came to create this amazing bespoke floral business.
Thanks very much. So I used to be a social care worker. I used to work in the disability sector in St. Michael's House. And I basically started the business on a whim. So we used to do kind of unsocial hours. So you'd go in every second weekend. You'd have to work Christmas or New Year. Yeah. And I'd worked in that sector for 18 years. I loved the job, but the hours were a bit of a killer with the kids.
Right.
So I decided I was going to go for an interview. I actually went for the interview for special needs assistant in a school in Drogheda. And I didn't get it because I was overqualified, which is ridiculous. So that I came away from that interview just really deflated. And I just thought, what am I going to do? And myself, my sister, she's a hairdresser, came up with this scheme. We'd start a floral design business, and she would bring the clients that she does the weddings, and we would do the flowers as well. That was the idea behind it.
Right.
I was always into colour. Always loved having flowers in the house.
Yeah.
But never thought I was super creative, as in I couldn't draw in art in school.
Okay.
So my auntie is a floral designer, and she trained us for 2 days in kind of the basics.
Okay.
And then we kind of did weekly flowers for the kind of people in the village, but we were making very little money, spent a fortune, because I loved really gorgeous flowers that you don't usually see in a flower shop.
Right.
Like garden roses and ranunculus and all those beautiful ones. So about 9 months into the business, my sister was like, this is not working out. When are we going to make money?
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm out. I was like, okay. So then I rebranded Bella Botanica because I had a vision in my head that I wanted to work on really kind of luxurious weddings with people who loved flowers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to target the American market because I knew that the American market really invested their money in floral designs.
Right.
So that was always the goal.
Yeah.
I was always really into kind of vision boards and stuff like that. And for the first few years, I worked out of a shed in the back of my garden.
Yeah.
And I used to tell my clients, I'd come and do a walkthrough with you because I couldn't bring them to the shed in the back of my garden.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. So I do walkthroughs in the different gorgeous venues and castles and stuff. And how I got the break with the American clients was this American girl found me online, and I worked with her, and she kind of hired a wedding planner after that.
Okay.
Water Lily Weddings, who are based in the States.
I'd
an
be
Irish
that bride.
girl. Yeah.
I would be that bride. I'd be flowers first, and let everything else. I'll find the man after.
Yeah, and then that's how kind of that end of things came about. And myself and Michelle from Water Lily Weddings had an amazing relationship, and that's kind of where the American aspect came in. So yourself, once you kind of set the wheels in motion, then things just come to you.
First of all, I can't believe that you say you didn't have an artistic flair, because I have never seen anything more beautiful than your creations. My draw drops when I am on your Instagram stories.
You're so kind.
I think at this stage, I would love to share with the listeners how there was a period of time when Sylvia was building a new home.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I love it, even your attitude to that. You had that vision of what you wanted, and you just kept, even though your sister, for practical reasons, jumped overboard, and that's fine.
And that's cool, yeah.
That's cool. I love that you had this vision and you were so true to what you wanted and went after it. But there was a time when you were kind of doing something similar with a new build in a house that you worked in my house. So I said, so a little bit of background. Sylvia came into me maybe 15, 20 years ago in the Barbriggan Clinic?
It's longer because I'm with Darren about 23 years.
Well, I remember your engagement.
Yeah. So I got engaged in 2003.
Well, there you go. Sylvia was a client of mine, and I loved her energy coming through the door. And very quickly, we became very, very good friends.
Yeah.
And then fast forward many years, like I said, the engagement, your wedding, and having the kids as well. And then you were building a house, and you'd nowhere to do your flowers. So I suggested you worked in. I have a pretty big shed out my back. And I was like a Kardashian every morning, waking up to these abundance of roses and beautiful flowers. And you'd give me the history. My jaw would drop. I'm so overwhelmed by how beautiful nature is.
I know. They're an art in themselves. The
really
flowers are an art in themselves. I'm blessed to work with such gorgeous products.
You really are.
Yeah.
You absolutely are. And that's why I'm so glad that you found that niche and are working with that, because flowers are expensive,
They're very expensive. They're a luxury item.
They really are. And so go back to then. So we have the American team, the American brides.
And then I worked in your. What happened was we put a bid in the house. It fell through, so it meant we were renting for about a year and a half, which was not expected. While we bought another house and built, and I was in your shed.
Yes,
you were so good. That was a lifesaver.
You worked so hard.
When I think back to it, it was just crazy.
Like I used to go to bed and I'd wake up and you would still be pruning flowers.
Yeah. I was still designing through the night.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was still trying to make it work. And then there was a period of time after that before we could actually get into the house. I worked in the shell of the house. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I had no water.
Oh my God.
And I used to have to drive like buckets of water up to the house to put the flowers in. So yeah, I'm pretty determined when it comes to making it work.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I suppose that the floral design business just grew from there.
It grew from there, and then of course you were building your house as well.
Yeah.
How long was it? And then COVID hit, but it had to be absolutely soul destroying for you because at that point your business was due to kick off really.
Yeah.
And of course weddings were just grinded to a halt.
Yeah, I had so many gorgeous weddings planned for that year, like in venues that I hadn't worked in before, like ideal like couples. And then COVID struck and it was just like, whoa, it came out of nowhere. And because I do work with Irish couples too, I'm from couples from all over the world, but a lot of my couples were from the States.
Yeah.
So they couldn't travel. So at the start, it was like, okay, we'll reschedule that. That's no problem. But then after like 2 or 3 reschedules, people were like, listen, I'm not going to get married in Ireland. I can't. My parents are vulnerable. We're not going to travel. So then it was a case of giving back money and refunds. And like, I didn't have to do it because there's a clause in my contract, that your booking retainer is non-refundable. But no one was expecting COVID. So it wasn't as if these people were just deciding willy-nilly like, oh, I can't be bothered getting married in Ireland.
Yeah.
So that was tough. Yeah. Because there's no money coming in.
No.
And there's lots of money coming back out.
Was that just peak stress for you or how did it make you feel?
Yeah, it was really stressful because every day you'd open your inbox and there'd be another email saying, listen, we're not moving forward. We're going to get married at home. Or some people push their weddings really far out. So like, there was just nothing in the books.
Yeah.
Like there was just no weddings or events. I did one in the summer with Marie Reedy event when it opened up for a very small period and you could have like 25 people.
Right, yeah.
And I was delighted.
Yay! Yeah, yeah.
And that was gorgeous. We were all in our element because we got to design again and work. Yeah. But yeah, it was really tricky.
Yeah, and of course you just had your new built house.
The studio, because we bought this house because it had land that I could build a studio on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is just crazy. What, like of all the industries to be in.
I know.
You know?
Yeah. But you did pivot and you did create Botanica School.
Yeah, the flower school.
Talk to us about that.
So in between the lockdowns, I started the flower school. Where people like floral designers who were established used to come to the studio and I would teach them over 4 days how to kind of create better business models. So we talk about pricing because that's a really tricky point with floral designers. They don't price enough.
Okay.
And then we talked about like how to kind of, have a consultation, how to create proposal. The basics behind it's not all just designing. There's a lot before you get to that stage. And then we would do kind of design elements and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I had like gorgeous women come to the studio and with great crack. And like that, like you're saying, the podcast, like a therapy session we were talking about earlier on, that's what it was like in the room. Everyone's just like, brilliant. Oh my God, this has happened to me. And everyone's just been really open. Yeah. Because I found at the start, when I started out, people were very cliquey and kept all the information to themselves.
Right. Like everybody was competition.
Yeah, everyone's competition. You'd be at a wedding fair and everyone would be hiding their flowers.
I know. But you know what? That community group, I often say the meaning of life is to find your gift and the purpose of life is to give it away.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're doing. This clearly is your gift and to give that and empower other floral specialists in those skills. And those, like you said, those little tricky things like contracts, etc. that people don't think of. And then people undervaluing the work is a huge thing as well. So to have the confidence to say, this is actually the price tag on this. Norma Jean Rose.
Yeah, your favourite.
My favourite. So Sylvia, we're here today, of course, to raise awareness for early onset diagnosis of Parkinson's because you were just coming out of COVID when your life was going to take a turn for, a long turn curve more. But still, it was at this point that you started to notice symptoms yourself of Parkinson's. But at the time, probably didn't even think. Tell us exactly what was going on.
Looking back, I didn't even associate with this with anything. But just before the lockdown, we went to France to go skiing, and while we were over there, the country locked down.
Yeah,
right. So we didn't get to ski. Right. So there was one of the days we climbed up this big ski slope. I was at the top of it and I was going to sledge down. And I was never afraid of heights. I used to do bungee jumping, jumped out of a plane, never afraid. And I felt like I was going to fall off the mountain. I was just so disorientated, really afraid. I couldn't move. So my son had to climb up and get me back down, right? It was really weird. And then there was another day where we had climbed up and we were doing this walk down, which was pretty safe. It wasn't like, steep.
Yeah.
And I had to go down on my bum, because I felt like I was just, really dizzy and disorientated. And that's 2020. So I didn't really put anything to it. But then in 2021, there was a few things happening. So I was having these kind of dizzy spells, like kind of vertigo. I also went on holidays and one of my friends said to me, you're walking afterwards when I was mentioned symptoms, you're walking a little bit funny to one side. And I was like, all right. And at that stage, I was having these kind of shooting, really unusual kind of darts in my head on my left side. I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
And I'd noticed my hand, on my left hand, there was a little bit of a shaking, like really tiny, like minute. But there was loads of other random things that had been going on. Like I had issues like with my swallow. But I was putting them down to asthma attacks. Like, so I'd have these choking fits out of nowhere on like a drink or saliva or something like that. And I always just put it down to asthma. And then there was one day I came out of the gym and I went to drive my car and I had a tremor in my right foot and the car was bouncing up the road. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I've just worked too hard.
I know.
And then I kind of dismissed it. And then 2 nights later, we were driving back from Skerries after a meal and the kids and Darren were in the car and the same thing happened again. And I was just like, Darren was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, it's just my sandals. And then I go home and I was thinking, this is a bit weird.
Right.
And I'd noticed when I was out with my pals, it was always when I was at ease and resting.
Okay.
I'd be having a coffee and I'd have these little kind of episodes where the left side of my face would go a little bit numb. And I'd also have to really concentrate on using my knife and my fork, which is really weird. Like things that are automatic.
Yeah.
So I went to my GP and he was like, oh, maybe you're B12 deficient. So I was on borderline on the B12, but he put me on like a month of injections. No joy.
No change.
No. Things were just getting kind of steadily kind of worse. Had a brain scan in the October in 21. That was clear.
Okay.
So that was the summer of 21. And then I didn't get to see a neurologist till the January of 22. And I suppose my age...
Menopause, perimenopause.
Threw them off. I didn't fit into the category of Parkinson's and such.
So they were not even thinking that.
No, and I asked the question. They were like,
Did you?
Yeah, and they were
so
like,
how
no.
come that was on your perimeter? How come?
Because I knew that my tremor had got worse.
Right. And that was worse at rest, which is a big thing.
Yeah. But when I went for the exam with the neurologist, she noticed that she said I had an essential tremor, that my hand, there was like a fine shake in both them.
Okay.
But I'd also explained that it kind of started in the top of my arm, which was really strange. It looked like, like Alien, as if there's something creeping in underneath your arm.
Really?
It's like something wiggling underneath, like this little tremor. And that progressed. So I kind of spent the year going for lots of different tests, like making sure I didn't have epilepsy, nerve conduction studies, I think they were trying to figure out, is this associated with something else? Because with neurological issues, a lot of the symptoms kind of cross over.
Okay.
Even with MS, there's tremor, but the difference with MS is that it's more like an essential tremor. It's not a resting tremor.
Okay.
My sleep was being affected. I was always a great sleeper. I was having bouts of this insomnia. So I was keeping a diary while I was having all the tests throughout the year. And the last test was December just gone. And it was a lumbar puncture to rule out MS. Because everything else had kind of been ruled out, along the way. And that came back clear.
Okay.
But before I had that test, or actually after the test I was in the hospital, my tremor kicked off. And when it kicks off, it's really noticeable. So it starts off like a little shake.
Okay.
And then it works up to this crazy shake. It's all left-sided.
Right.
Where you can't ignore it. And no matter if you try and hold your hand down or if you try and move positions or anything like that. You have to just let it just go. And then it will just kind of peter out.
Okay.
And Darren had said, that was the worst I've ever seen your tremor. And he was up all night Googling, and I'd Googled as well. And I knew that a lot of the symptoms I had kind of correlated with the symptoms of Parkinson's, apart from the age.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had an inkling before I went back. That was at Christmas. And then I went back to her in January.
Mm-hmm.
And at that, during the year, a few things had popped up. Like when they did an MRI on my spine, they figured out I had spina bifida.
Okay.
Right. Incidental finds, right?
So if we all got scanned, we'd all find something.
You'd be on something, right?
Yeah,
So throughout the year, all the scans, they're trying to figure out, maybe that's got to do with the spina bifida. Maybe this has got to do with. But I kind of knew in my gut that was not the crack.
Yeah.
So when we went back, I was like, can we discuss maybe the issue of like reviewing Parkinson's again? And she had said to me, we'll discuss that further down the line. And only for...
We're 2 years down the line at this point.
Only for... I went in to get my notes out of my bag. I've been tracking my symptoms.
Right.
And my tremor was every day at this stage, several times a day.
Okay.
So it was having a big impact
on
me
work.
and on my work.
Yeah.
Like, designing, typing, like things that, even cutting my own food, things that you take for granted, like automatic.
Actually, Sylvia, I remember because when you had told me about it, you were in having a Lay's MD with me in the clinic, and you'd more or less, you hadn't any confirmation at this point, but you knew it. I felt you were almost at peace with the diagnosis, that you diagnosed yourself at this point. But you told me you'd done a test in Australia, a typing test,
my God,
which I thought was mind-blowing. Talk to us about that.
I was just trying to rule out everything.
Yeah.
So it was this test came up called KeySense. And it's a test that the Australian Parkinson's organisation, they have it on their website. And I was like, what's this? And I was like, this is not going to work. So basically you type out this passage and it kind of finds small little discrepancies in your finger movement.
Right. In your rhythm.
Yeah, before you are even diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's very early signs, right?
Okay.
And so I did this whole thing and my hand was obviously tiring out. So that's what happens. Like repetitive movement or anything like that tires the muscles out. Okay. And my left side would be weaker. So obviously my fingers were probably slipping or dragging on the keys, stuff that you wouldn't really notice. And at the report was kind of saying, you have the signs of, early onset Parkinson's. Bring this to show to your neurologist.
Okay.
But it's not recognised here because when I mentioned to the neurologist, he'd never heard of it. So I asked, like a crazy person, all my friends
to sit down and do the test.
To do the test.
Karina's going home to do the test. They were like, well, you can't spell anyway.
But everyone's like, no, I'm not a great typist. I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, no, it's nothing to do with how you type. It's how the cadence of your fingers on the keys. So lots of my friends did it. My family did it. And all their tests were grand.
Really?
And I was like, because I was kind of thinking, sure, this is probably not true.
Yeah, I know.
Even though I kind of knew in my gut. And I brought that actual test with me in January.
It was something else for them to ignore.
I was like, she was like, I've never heard of that before. And I was like, oh, okay. But that day, the tremor kicked off in the neurologist's office.
Yeah, today the lumbar puncture, this
was going back for the results. And she's like, it's great news. You don't have MS, which is brilliant.
Obviously,
yeah. And there's nothing else there. They did a really there was conclusive results that there was nothing else going on. So with Parkinson's, there's no specific test for it, like an MRI scan. Mm-hmm. So it's a case of eliminating all everything the else. Other diseases that might have similar symptoms. So she saw my rest and tremor. My hand was shaking like this. And she was like, you didn't have that when you came here last time. Like, I think she got a bit of a shock. I could see she had her mask on, but I knew she got a bit of a shock. And I said, I was trying to explain to you that I know at the time when I came to see you, you couldn't see the rest and tremor, that you saw essential tremors in my hand. But it was there and has progressed now that my whole arm and hand shakes within a year. So she was taken aback. And I said, do I need to see like a specialist in this area? And she said, I can do the exam right now. So it was the meeting didn't go the way I suppose she'd planned in her head.
Yeah.
So she got me to walk because usually there's 3 indicators for Parkinson's. So usually it's issues with your gait. So you may shuffle when you walk.
Okay.
The second is rigidity in your muscles. And then the third is a rest and tremor. So I had the rest and tremor. Mm-hmm. So she put me on the bed and she examined my limbs and stuff. And I knew when she went to my left side, she was something wasn't right. And then she went back and did both sides again. And she says, you have 2 indicators for Parkinson's. You have rigidity in your left arm.
I know, but also it had to be nearly a relief at that point. Did you feel heard?
Yeah, because I thought I was going mad.
Yeah.
I thought I was going like a little bit crazy. I was thinking, I know there's something going on, but they just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well, it was 2 years, you know, and you were fighting your own corner at that point. You know, you'd taken videos of the rest in tremor. You wanted them to look at the videos. You wanted to be seen and to be heard. And
yeah, because I knew something wasn't right. So that meeting was just crazy. It was like, and I think for her it was also like she nearly just felt a bit blindsided because she wasn't expecting it to go that way. So she just said, I'm just going to write you a prescription. It was so strange. She says, I'm just going to write you a prescription for Cinema, which is a Parkinson's drug. It's the drug that, you know, most people go on.
Okay.
And my mind started going into overdrive. I was like, because I had looked and listened to podcasts. I'd looked at information and I'd heard that you can't take your medication with protein because it doesn't absorb properly. So I was like, does this mean I can't take my meds with this? And I could see her. She was like, "Can you just go outside and wait for a couple of minutes in the waiting room?"
While she gets over the shock.
Yeah, I could see it, and I can understand. I didn't present as someone that was typical of someone who had Parkinson's.
Do you know, they say about Parkinson's, if you've met somebody with Parkinson's, then you've met somebody with Parkinson's.
Everyone's really different. Their symptoms are really different, and my age just showed them because I'm 46.
Yeah.
So they weren't thinking like someone who's 44 when I first started, going about this, would have Parkinson's, especially a woman, people.
Is it just more men?
Well, people think of Parkinson's as someone like really old in their 80s, and they're usually men.
Okay.
But that's not the crack,
Yeah.
So we came out of the office, she gave me the script, and then that was it.
She was like, get out of here.
It was like, okay, I'll see you in 2.5 months for a review on your meds. So I wasn't told outright, you have young onset Parkinson's disease. It was like, you have 2 indicators for Parkinson's disease. Here's the meds, come back to me 2.5 months. I wasn't told how to take them. I wasn't told anything. I wasn't told these are the supports, nothing. So we left and it was just like, whoa. Even though we both had an inkling that was probably going to be the crack.
Yeah.
It's still like a bit
There's no support there for you guys.
No.
For you, most importantly.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame. And one of the reasons why I really wanted you on here today, if there's anyone else out there listening, that there is support.
There is things if you go looking. So I'm lucky that I have that real determined, stubborn nature.
That has served you very well.
And I like to be proactive and take action on things. So I remember going home and sitting in the bath with my laptop and
Oh, Jesus, is that not dangerous?
No, well, maybe if I had a tremor and I knocked it into the water. No, the bath tray was way back.
Okay. I think I seen a horror movie and that was the scene.
Stop. So I remember sitting in the bath, Googling everything, Googling neurologists, what other way I can go, looking at movement disorder clinics. I joined joined Parkinson's Ireland Association. And then there was another one, EOPD, that were putting on this evening with this neurologist who's based in the Mater.
Okay.
And I was like, Darren, will you come? It was a Friday night. And I was like,
Date night.
This is where date nights have come to. We're sitting in a room with lots of old people. And
you were down for ID.
And your man's talking about brain surgery. I'm like, whoa, how did we end up here? But we went anyway. And the professor was brilliant. He gave me, there was lots of information. Now, I didn't know the meeting was on DBS, which is deep brain stimulation, which is essentially like a brain up.
Okay.
So
it's one course of a modality of treatment for Parkinson's.
Yeah, it's. I suppose they look at people if they're maybe 5 years in.
Okay.
It's usually around that time if they need it, and you have to meet criteria. Okay. So you have to not have issues with speech or cognitive or balance, because when they put these wires into your brain, it can affect maybe your speech center and things like that. So it's not it's not a fix. It's not a one for all. And it's not a cure. It's just to kind of make your quality of life better. Okay. So we had totally thrown ourselves in the deep end. I was like, oh God. But he was lovely. And I thought it was going to be really busy. So I typed this letter out because I knew I wanted to find a neurologist that specialised in Parkinson's.
Okay.
And I typed this letter out. He thought I was crazy. And it was basically, hi, I'm Sylvia. I have 3 kids and I explained I have a business and I really want to get on top of this Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And I heard he was one of the best. So I thought I would just throw the letter at him because it'd be too busy.
To Sir with love.
Yeah, but it wasn't busy. Okay. So it was like,
Sylvia had to go up to him.
Can you take my letter? He's kind of like smirking going, what's this?
It's like Santa Claus.
Yeah. I said, can you just read it? The information.
Yeah. And I'll just leave.
Yeah, I don't want to talk. And he asked me kind of what the crack was and I kind of filled him in. He said, there should be no problem you coming into the matter. And I said, really? Because I had to ring around and get my own neurologist.
Okay.
And he was like, get your GP to send in a referral letter. I said, okay.
So you wanted this guy. You knew he was on top of his game.
I knew he was really into research. Brilliant. I knew he was over the deep brain stimulation clinic. And he said, like, no, I'm over the deep brain stimulation clinic. So it may not be me, you see, it might be one of my colleagues like Connor. And I said, okay, no problem. And so when I was in with the neurologist in January, I asked her to do the referral letter to those 2 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd already done your research. That was meant to be.
Yeah.
And then you went and tracked him down.
I tracked him down. So I have a meeting in August.
That's brilliant.
In the matter. Yeah. So in the movement disorder clinic. So I had to go private for all these.
Okay.
The waiting list, if you're going like with the HSC, is like 5 years to see a neurologist.
What?
So for someone who has Parkinson's, you can imagine the damage that's been done because when you present with physical symptoms, 80% of your dopamine levels, they're gone. Like 80% of your dopamine neurons are gone. Because the dopamine is a neurotransmitter, so it's like the chemical messenger.
So that's literally what Parkinson's is.
Yeah, it's the lack of dopamine. Reduced dopamine. So it sits in between your neurons and it transfers messages to different parts of your body.
Which is why it would never show up in an MRI.
Yeah, so you have like motor symptoms, which is like, I suppose, your gait, your tremor and all that sort of stuff. And then you have non-motor symptoms, which are like apathy, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine if that dopamine is the feel-good hormone too, right? So you imagine if that's not there and it's reduced, that these issues can crop up.
Yeah. I remember when I looked into, when you told me about your diagnosis, and much like I have a very good friend with MS, I had to know everything there is to know about MS. And I went straight to Googling all about Parkinson's to see exactly what was going on. So when I seen reduced dopamine, etc., I was like, Sylvia's been to every music festival I know. She's strong. How the hell is her dopamine dead? This makes no sense.
There's still probably 20% that I'm clinging on to.
There it is. Boom, boom, boom.
And I think, all those things are feel-good things, right?
Yeah.
So like, exercise is really important.
Oh, you came to me last Thursday night straight from the gym.
I know, it's really important. So you have to do it daily because it's one of the things that have been proven to slow the progression down.
Brilliant.
And things like dance. So I've joined this like dance cardio class down the road for me and it's brilliant. It's great crack. So
I think I might tag along there some night.
And it's to do things, I suppose, that make you feel good too and keep myself mobile.
But imagine the HSC basically we're going to say to you, good luck for 5 years. We might just fit you in at that point, which is just not good enough. Sylvia.
No, and I was just blessed that I had private health, insurance.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, so, that's how I got to see all the different people, like the urologist and like there was a throat specialist. I was seeing lots of different people.
Yeah.
So now it's a case of me building my own team to support it. So not only just traditional medicine, so like acupuncture. I have a physical therapist I'm going to every 4 weeks too, just to try and release some of that rigidity. I'm doing meditation. I trained in Reiki. I'm trying everything.
Cold therapy.
I'm waiting for my ice bath. That's coming. So I plan to do it every morning.
When you were telling me about that, I was like, I'll call over to get into something. I said 9 hours later, Corinne would be like, any minute now. No, I'm going to get in. No, I'm not going home.
I know. And I was sitting on my bed the other day and it was lashing. And I was like, you've just committed to getting out there every morning. We'll see if the pans out.
Sylvia, tell me about the kids, because I know when we spoke just before you got the official diagnosis, this was something that you hadn't spoke to them about it, and of course Darren and your parents and your own family. How has it been? Because I know how much I love you, and the worst thing for me is seeing people I love struggle or in pain.
Yeah,
and, it had to be so difficult on them.
It was really tough for everyone, and that was nearly the hardest thing for me.
You wanted to protect them. Yeah.
You're going to put me over the edge.
I know, you're going to put me over the edge.
So it was really tough. Like Darren, really wanted, he was like, I'd take it on. Why can't, I would rather I have it than you have it. you know, and I said, you'd be a shit patient. That's why I'd have to listen to you. And I'd have to mind you. Yeah. So we've used a lot of dark humor to get through it. Like when things have been shitty, like the first, you know, few weeks and couple of months were really difficult because it's like such a big thing. It's not like an injury for 6 weeks.
No.
You're like, sometimes I wake up and go, this is as good as these physical symptoms are going to get.
Yeah.
You know, when the symptoms are kicking off
because
it is progressive. And obviously my mum and dad, my sisters and all, my brother were like, they're all heartbroken.
Yeah.
And I can imagine like if it was my kid, you know, but I found it like kind of a little bit hard when, you know, when people, not trying to manage people's emotions because everyone was at my pals and everything, you know, were just like gutted.
Yeah.
But they've been amazing. I'm really lucky that I have such an amazing family and friends.
Yeah. Do you know, that's not luck, Sylvia. You have amazing family and friends because of how amazing you are.
Oh, you're so good.
No, and what an incredible person you are. And even how you've handled this and everything, you know, it's so admirable. I just admire you so much. And, you know, even with work, tell us about work. What is your plan there? Have you managed to keep going?
Yeah, I've still got gorgeous weddings to work on. So what I did was usually I used to teach for the 4 days in the spring and then in the autumn, kind of when floral designers are before and after their busy wedding season. But I decided this year to take a break in the spring. I didn't release the 4-day business workshop. I just felt like it would just be too much. It's very intense for the 4 days. And I was trying to figure out my medication at the time.
Yeah.
Because when you're adjusting to the medication, you know, your symptoms are up and down until the medication is settled.
Okay, yeah.
So
I guess your body is to become compliant and develop a
you're trying to figure out what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
So then I just took a break on that. But I'm also, I have online workshops that you can find through Teachable that are on my website.
So are they available to professionals only? Or
anyone can do them.
Yeah.
But they're aimed more at professionals because they're large structures that you would see at weddings and events.
Yeah.
But I have gorgeous weddings coming up with lovely couples and I can't wait to get stuck into them.
Yeah.
Because I love designing. Like I love being in the thick of it. I love the excitement of a wedding.
Absolutely.
Being there on one of the best days for like
someone's life.
Yeah, for the couple and their family. Everyone's in good form. So I'm sure I'll get plenty of dopamine.
Yes, that's your dopamine, your main source of dopamine. Absolutely. And getting to work with these stunningly beautiful flowers.
I know.
Only it happens the odd now, very rare, but the only recently I was out and one of the girls, Grace Reamer, rang me to say I was after getting flowers delivered, which of course makes my day. And then they told me it came in a massive truck and they were in massive boxes. I was like, damn, they're not for me.
Yeah, so there was one of the wholesalers that had, I don't know why, because I'd sent my new address to old address, but they had your old address and I think it was certain drivers kept delivering the big boxes of flowers to your house.
Oh my God, I just loved it. So tell me, what would you say, Sylvia, to someone out there maybe in a similar situation with you, or maybe somebody who's got the symptoms and they're afraid? Because there is that, like if I just ignore it, it'll go away.
No.
Or, you know, what would you say to somebody maybe diagnosed with
I'd
early
say
onset?
trust your gut and like doctors are amazing, but they don't know everything.
No.
So if you have this feeling that is not right, like you can challenge a doctor and tell them, I know how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And like accept those feelings, emotions when you've been diagnosed, because it is like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I've never felt that way where 1 minute you're hysterically laughing and then you're howling, crying.
Yeah.
And it was like for 1 week, I think I never cried so much. I was like, there's nothing left. But then someone would say something and I'd be crying again. So just, talk about it. Like talk about it with your friends and family. Doesn't matter if you're crying or laughing or whatever.
Yeah.
Be open about it. I think if you shut yourself away and pretend it's not happening and you're trying to hide your symptoms, it brings more stress.
Yeah.
And that's why I did that post on More Parkinson's Day, because I felt like, I went to a wedding industry evening and I felt like really self-conscious and I was trying to hide my tremor.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't belong. I came home and I was like, oh, I don't belong in this industry anymore. And Darren's like, yes, you do. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to put it out there. So I put it across all my social media platforms.
Yeah.
And people start chatting the village. They'd see my tremor, word travels fast. And I wanted to take the control back. So, don't be embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
Don't hide yourself away, because Parkinson's wants to make your life really, really small.
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
And then educate yourself.
Yes, knowledge is power.
Yeah, knowledge is power. So educate yourself by listening to podcasts, by going on websites like Michael J. Fox Foundation, Parkinson's Ireland. I'll give you loads to put in your show notes.
Yeah.
Because that's where I got all my information from. Because I wasn't given any information when I left.
Okay.
So I listened to podcasts run by people with young onset Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
And I figured out how to take my meds.
Yeah.
The things I could be doing alternatively as well as medication.
Yeah.
To keep my mental health good and also my physical health. So just take responsibility for your own health. Don't rely on other people to drip feed you the information.
That's fantastic advice. You know, I think what makes us so fearful as humans is when we don't have control of something. If you think of anything that absolutely terrifies you, it's stuff that you don't have control over. So by taking your power back and, like you said, educating yourself on as many different things and not looking to a medic necessarily for support, you know, be your own hero, because you were kind of abandoned that day and you had to become your own hero. Yeah,
and unfortunately, I think it's a common pattern.
Yeah.
You know, even listening to people in the States that here's your diagnosis, off you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, okay. Yeah. You try and figure it out yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to jump too far forward.
Yeah. No.
I'm not, at the start I was like, what am I going to do if I work with my hands? How's this going to progress? But everyone's progression is really different.
Yeah.
So I just can't go down the road of going down that rabbit hole of it. I need to keep my head right and focus on all the good stuff that's happening right now.
Good woman. Do you know, I think that's advice we can all take. You know, absolutely Parkinson's is going to become part of your life, but it is not your life. It does not define who you are as a person.
I know, it's just there at the side.
There at the side.
Just have to keep it happy now and then.
Yeah, exactly.
My friend said it's like a gremlin. You need to feed it or it loses control. Feed it its medication.
Yeah, but also show it who's boss.
Go to your bed and stop your meds.
Yeah, exactly. Sylvia, where can people find you? Of course, they have you at Botanica is your Instagram handle, which if everybody wants a dopamine hit, follow Sylvia, because it is the most beautiful page with the most beautiful creations. And as you can see and hear from the person in front of me, with the most beautiful person behind it. But you know, Sylvia, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I know you were absolutely terrified to come on here today.
My nerves are gone. And I hope I wasn't rambling in that whole...
You were not. I absolutely loved our conversation. Are you feeling good about it now?
I'm feeling good. I'd say I'm swinging in this chair because I'm such a fidgeter for the whole thing.
Sylvia, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yours good.